The people of Zimbabwe are waking up to a nightmare that feels all too familiar, yet no less shocking. Imagine a nation, battered by decades of economic hardship, still struggling to recover from political upheaval, now facing the very real possibility that its leader, President Emerson Mnangagwa, could refuse to step aside when his time is up. How would you feel if the man elected to protect your rights and uphold the Constitution suddenly sought to override the very rules that limit his power? This is not a hypothetical scenario. ZANU-PF, the ruling party, has now openly backed a plan to extend Mnangagwa's presidency until 2030, effectively rewriting the Constitution to secure his grip on power. Could Zimbabwe be heading back toward the same authoritarian nightmare that defined Robert Mugabe's 30-year rule? What do you think should happen if a leader refuses to respect term limits? Comment below. Mnangagwa, 83, who came to power in 2017 through a military-backed coup that ousted Mugabe, has already served 2 terms, having been elected in 2018 and re-elected in 2023. Under Zimbabwean law, he should step down at the end of this term, but ZANU-PF insists that legal barriers are merely obstacles to their so-called 2030 agenda. For months, the party has quietly planned a constitutional amendment to allow Mnangagwa to stay in power. Now, they have declared it public policy. How long is too long for a leader to remain in office? For ordinary Zimbabweans, this announcement is infuriating and terrifying. Citizens like Moses Msipa from Bulawayo see history repeating itself. One of the main reasons Mugabe became reviled is because he became a dictator and overstayed, and now they want to take us back to that, he said. The anger is palpable. People who lived through Mugabe's rule remember the corruption, the repression, the economic collapse, and now they fear a return to that reality. If you lived under a government that ignored term limits, how would you react? The opposition is vocal but fragmented. Prominent lawyer Tendai Biti has pledged to defend the Constitution against what he calls a capture by party elites, while opposition leaders are calling press conferences and warning citizens about the looming constitutional crisis. Yet, as Musa Kika of the Institute for Human Rights and Development in Africa warns, grassroots organizing is weak, leaving public dissent unlikely to turn into effective resistance. Can a nation reclaim its democracy without strong leadership from civil society? Zimbabwe's history has shown a disturbing pattern: power entrenched within a single party, law bent to serve the ruling elite, and public voices silenced through intimidation and coercion. ZANU-PF has been in power since 1980, and despite decades of promises for reform, the party has mastered the art of manipulating legal institutions to maintain its dominance. They are good at manipulating the institutions that operationalize the law through coercion and capture, Kika says, leaving citizens with few tools to defend their rights. Legal experts stress that any change to presidential term limits is supposed to be difficult. Zimbabwe's constitution, amended in 2013, enforces a strict 2-term limit for presidents. To overturn this would require a 2/3 vote in both houses of parliament and a national referendum. Yet, the concern among analysts is that the ruling party, motivated by self-interest, might find ways to bypass these safeguards, as it has done in the past. How far do you think a government can go before citizens step in to stop it? The 2030 agenda is more than just a political ploy. It is, according to experts, an attempt by ZANU-PF elites to secure immunity for themselves, to ensure they are not held accountable for corruption, and to continue accumulating wealth while ordinary Zimbabweans suffer. Mnangagwa, though often described as a figurehead for this elite, is central to their plans. The people who benefit most from this extension are not the citizens, they are the insiders whose power and wealth are at stake. Public frustration is intense. Citizens face an economy that is technically growing but remains deeply unequal, rampant corruption, and limited freedom of expression. Efforts to protest the term extension have already been met with harsh police crackdowns, detentions, and intimidation. Even small acts of dissent are risky, which has created a climate of fear. Imagine being so afraid of speaking out that even attending a protest could mean imprisonment. Would you stay silent or risk everything to fight back? Observers warn that without unified resistance, this move could cement authoritarianism in Zimbabwe for years to come. Eldred Massanungar, a political analyst, notes that with the opposition splintered and civil society weakened, there are few practical avenues to challenge Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF. Still, there are voices calling for unity, like Tafadzwa Moyo, a 29-year-old university graduate in Bulawayo, who insists that citizens must come together across political divides to reclaim democracy. Could unity among ordinary citizens turn the tide against entrenched power? Internationally, the world is watching. Zimbabwe has often been criticized for human rights abuses and political suppression, but foreign governments have largely avoided direct intervention, leaving citizens to confront their government alone. Will global pressure ever be enough to counter entrenched authoritarianism, or does real change only come from inside? The symbolism is powerful. Two-term limits exist for a reason, to prevent precisely the kind of extended rule that can corrode institutions, concentrate power, and suppress dissent. Yet here we are, witnessing a ruling party attempting to override the Constitution for personal gain. How many times must a country ignore its own laws before citizens say, enough is enough? As the weeks and months unfold, one thing is clear. The eyes of Zimbabwe are open, and the people are watching. Whether they remain silent in fear or rise to reclaim their democracy will define the next chapter of this nation's history. What would you do if your country's constitution were under threat? Speak your mind in the comments. Small acts matter. Conversations, social media posts, peaceful gatherings, these are the seeds of resistance. History shows that when ordinary people refuse to accept abuse of power, change is possible. Zimbabwe's next chapter is unwritten, and its people hold the pen. What would you write if you had a voice? Even in the face of repression, hope persists. Citizens like Tafadzwa Moyo remind us that unity and determination can challenge even entrenched power. Zimbabweans know the stakes. Their democracy, their rights, their future. Will they rise to the occasion? Now ask yourself, if a leader in your country tried to change the rules to stay in power, would you act or stay silent? And what does this say about the state of democracy in nations where fear, corruption, and ambition collide? Comment below. Your voice matters. The coming months in Zimbabwe are critical. The world watches, but the power ultimately lies in the hands of its people. Will history judge them for courage or for silence? And what lessons can other nations learn from this unfolding constitutional crisis? The story is not over. The struggle continues. Every citizen, every conversation, every act of vigilance counts. Zimbabwe's democracy is at a test of endurance, and the outcome will shape the nation for decades to come. Are you ready to stand up for what is right, even when it's difficult?